I mean, we're going to talk about Lorcana. We're going to talk about the metagame. We might talk about cheating a little bit, but my opinions on that are not controversial, right? I think we should be active as a community and trying to discourage cheating. I think there needs to be a judge program. And so any of that stuff that I'm going to say is not something I'm going to want to take back because it's like, it's not like I'm going to be like, it's not going to be like, actually, I think cheating is cool. And then afterward, I'm like, guys, can we not air this? You know what I mean? Like, that was weird. I live in Atlanta right now, but I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, and Costa Rica a little bit.
Oh, okay. Wow. Did you live in Costa Rica?
Yeah, well, so my dad's Costa Rican. He was born and raised in Costa Rica. And so the way that I came up basically is I would do during the school year, I would be going to school in the United States of America, get that American education. And then during the summers, it was just cheaper to send me to Costa Rica than to send me to summer camp. So they would send me there. I'd stay with my grandma and grow up. So I kind of grew up half in, half out of Costa Rica.
Oh, okay, that's really cool. That's a really diverse experience. I feel like you don't really hear people be like, yeah, I'm from the south of the United States and also Spanish-speaking countries. It's not something very common. Zach and I are from California, so we obviously like we're out here doing our thing, and it's super hot today. So if I start sweating on camera, I'm sorry. But
Did you guys ever play Magic the Gathering?
I have not. I mean, I know how to play. I've never played that game competitively. I played a couple other games though, but Magic don't have too much experience in. That's the game that you are a little bit more like well versed in. I imagine before Lorcana.
So yeah, the reason I was asking is because my best friend Zan Syed, he used to live in California, and at the time he was like a big Magic the Gathering player. I was a pro Magic player in the strict sense of the word, meaning I used that to pay my bills. I was a pro Magic player in 2019.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I like that. I like that Magic has always had like a good cash prize pool to be able to do something like that. We were actually just talking about this, but I kind of want to ask now. Did you happen to know Corey McDuffie, R.I.P.?
Yeah, I did. I knew him toward the end of his life. He would call me every once in a while because when I was sort of getting to know Zan, traveling with Zan, Corey would be traveling with Zan also. So we were new to each other, but we were getting to know each other. He called me a couple times. He was going through some legal troubles, and I was in law school at the time. So we had a lot to talk about with regards to, he would be like, what can you tell me about all this? And I'd be like, honestly, not much. But if you, the same thing that all lawyers say, which is like, if you do what your lawyer says, you should be in a good spot, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I knew him.
Yeah, he also won nationals for Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's how I didn't really know him like that, but that's how like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community knew him. And whenever I think of like Magic players that are I guess like how do I say, it's like had been playing for such a long time, I often think like, oh yeah, dude, like one of our Yu-Gi-Oh! National champions was also a pro Magic player, and I think that's always really cool. I've always really appreciated how the card games overlap and stuff. I play a little bit of One Piece. I'm not good at it, but do you play any other card games, or is it just Lorcana for you now?
Like, my brain is broken in a specific way where I actually play all the card games. I'm playing Vibes right now. I played Digimon right when it came out. I mean, it's legitimately like my eyes go dead and I'm like, okay, tell me how to play the card game. I play all of them pretty much. I played Alestrals a little bit recently. Obviously Pokemon, pretty much everyone except Yu-Gi-Oh! Every time I play one game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm like, this is a bad game.
Did you ever play Hearthstone?
I didn't play very much Hearthstone. I played a small amount of Hearthstone when Zan told me to try it or whatever. But no, I didn't play a lot of Hearthstone. When I say I play every card game, I mean every basically physical card game.
Yeah, I always gotta agree that Yu-Gi-Oh! is not a fun game. It always feels like you have to commit so much time just to learn what's going on in the game.
Weirdly, you have to learn like what the cards do because you almost can't read them. It's the only card game I've ever experienced where I was like, this is a lot of text. This is crazy.
Yeah, and it's as someone who's going to law school, you probably would have a better time because it does feel like you have to be a lawyer to play that game. But if you don't know your rules and know how to read whatever they call it, problem solving card text, then you're just not gonna have a fun time. But that's the community we're from. So we definitely know how to deal with not fun games and not fun meta formats. And I think a lot of people are saying that this meta that we're currently in for Lorcana feels that way. Some people, I get very Doomer vibes, and the reason I bring this up now is because you were actually the first person to win a major tournament this format with the new like Sapphire Steel meta, and you played Sapphire Steel at the Southside Gaming tournament. Real quick, do you guys think it's a Doomer format? I don't. I feel like there's a lot going on in the metagame right now already, for sure. But what do you guys think?
This is the most fun I've had playing Lorcana in a really long time, actually. This is so the blue decks are really strong, but even within that, there's like starting to form the kind of rock, paper, scissors that really good metagames have, where your blue red is really good against blue steel, but maybe leaves a little bit of room for some of the like purple aggro decks to shine. And I think that is if you had to understand the metagame like in like 3 sentences, it's like blue steel's really strong and proactive and powerful. It's not very good against blue red, which isn't very good against purple steel and similar decks like that.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this meta too, it's like it almost feels like each day is like changing what people are playing. Like you're trying to beat, last week's flavor of the week, and it keeps on evolving, and we get these like community driven tournaments that actually give us a nice little reflection. Because this past weekend we in SoCal had a nice like 93 person tournament that Kevin was a part of. That ended up being like a 7 case tournament. If I remember correctly, yeah, they upped it. So it was advertised as a quad case, increased to a 7K, and Charlie's I think was also increased to a 13K. So these events that we're just having more locally are still getting a decent amount of attendance, and it just kind of shows that all of us are really looking forward to when they announce the next season of DLCs and when they announce Worlds. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of people when they say when is Worlds. Do you have any thoughts or any conclusions that you have came up with about like when this should happen?
I mean, a lot of people thought it was going to happen in March. That was like the big one. Obviously, that didn't happen. And now I'm at the point where I've already planned my summer. Like Kevin mentioned, I do comedy. And so some of the comedy work that I do is I work at the Georgia Renaissance Festival as one of the like people in like a stockade, and I make fun of people, and then they can pay to throw tomatoes at me.
What? Oh, that's a super cool gig. I'm sorry. I'm gonna need you to break that down a little bit. How do you even get into that?
Okay, so I've been doing stand-up comedy for a really long time, right? Since I was like 21 is when I went on stage first. But I'd wanted to do it forever before then. I was doing improv in my late teenage years, then I did stand-up comedy. So I've been doing stand-up comedy forever, and it's like something I have in my repertoire. And when you do stand-up comedy, a lot of like random jobs become available to you. Like people talk to you about if you want to do them. They'll see you do it at an open mic and they're like, hey, you're really good, I have something for you. And you're like, you're gonna book me on a show? And they're like, how do you like dinner theater? And you're like, okay. So that's not the same thing, but this was a similar one where I was at the Renaissance Festival, just sort of one of my friends wanted to go or whatever, and I saw that going on. And my crowd works like good. So I walked up to the guy and I was like, hey, I do stand-up comedy in Atlanta. I'll pretty much do or say whatever I need to do to get in that thing. What's up? And he was like, okay, that's awesome. I need somebody next week. Sit down right there and watch this for a few hours to like get it. And then we'll try you out next week. That's how it happened. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And the guy loves me, but I couldn't do it a lot last year because the DLC season was like right on Renaissance Festival season. And why are we talking about this? Who cares, right? Well, the reason I bring it up is what I'm saying is people are booked for the summer. And like a lot of people, right? There's a lot of like young professionals that play this game that have to plan a couple of months out. So this is the kind of thing where, it's got to be a few months out. I would say right now, the earliest I would like to see Worlds is probably the first weekend of July. I think any earlier than that's like absurd. And we're more realistically looking at August, September, and kind of doing like a winter thing, which I don't mind anyway, because people want to be outside in the summer and at DLCs in the winter. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm willing to I'll say I'm willing to bet that we're gonna the Worlds is gonna be probably like you said August, September type thing, like end of fall or kind of fall, beginning of fall, and maybe end of summer. And honestly, like I've already accepted on like my mental that we're not getting DLCs this year. We're not getting a DLC for this format. I don't think we're getting DLCs for Age of Far, and I'm okay with that in a sense. Like, I mean, it is a really fun game, and I definitely want to play this current meta. I think it's very fun. Same thing, by the way. I feel like right now the game is really it's a really fun game to play. Everybody's freaking out about Turn 1 Bell and Change Storm, whatever. But I have a lot of fun in playing the Yellow Green Dog deck, well, Purple Steel, Ruby Amethyst, even Blue Steel. Zach's having a blast testing out a bunch of different ways to play that deck, and yeah, from the first week, people were playing Oswald. Now no one's playing Oswald, and now Red Blue is like talking about being the best deck and whatnot. But yeah, I've already kind of like accepted that I don't think we're getting DLCs this year. In my opinion, and not to try and like talk down on Lorcana, because the team Lorcana is obviously doing what they got to do. It just feels like they bit off more than they could chew. There's a high expectation for some of this stuff, whether it be like the card game industry, like the rarities, how people expect to get their packs and stuff, or even just competitive play, man. And there's already an industry standard, and we have to be real. Lorcana has not met that industry standard. We don't even have a judge program. We don't even have a judge program, which is obviously causing a lot of a lot of conversation online on Twitter. Zach, what do you think? Are we gonna have any DLCs anytime soon, or Worlds? How are you feeling about that?
Well, you guys, I think are hitting more the nail on the head. In my delusional state, I wish we had a DLC this coming May, like how we had them last year. It started in May and went throughout till I think October, and then we had Continentals in January. So it's not timing well. We haven't even been given another like state of the game announcement from Ravensburger that they did this past like in February. And even then that still felt like there wasn't enough said, like they had like touched up on the fact that like we were like asking them for a response, and when they gave us that response we haven't heard anything else since. So it's hopeful that there's still a demand to play, there's still a demand for people to want these cards, and at the end of the day they're trying to figure it out. I think they're also looking to create their own like organized play department from what people have like gathered online and through other resources. They're trying to build a team, and they're trying to make that happen.
And then culturally it's a German company, and those are often very reliable but also very slow to move. So when they're hiring, they're not hiring the first people that they talk to. They're interviewing everybody. They're interviewing them for 4 months, and then they're going to do second round interviews 4 months later. That's like pretty typical for how those companies tend to move. So you know yeah, I think it's gonna be a while. But I think that we have an awesome community that's down to do tournaments, right? We just had the Charlie's tournament that just happened. You said there were lots of tournaments going on in Southern California. So I mean the game's gonna survive, but it's probably gonna take a hit. There's gonna be a little bit of restructuring. People are finding other things to do. I don't know if you know this, but there's the Vibes card game that has all those penguins on it. The Pudgy Penguins Vibes card game. They're doing a 20K in Connecticut, and like they have an online client that is at least as good, but probably not even as good as like Pixelborn, and they're just running with it. They're running at 20K. Their company moves fast, but they're in that's there's room for other card games to catch up, which we don't want to happen because Lorcana's been so good to all of us.
Is that the game that's like also NFTs? If I'm not mistaken.
The Pudgy Penguins project was an NFT project. They weren't as bad as like the Bored Apes and stuff like that, because they were kind of trying to do like a Neopets thing. So
Yeah.
at least those NFTs had a website, but I kind of like think it's pretty much all just garbage, any of the like blockchain stuff. But I will say, to the credit of that company, so that nobody comes at me in like 2 months if the game really takes off, that specific NFT project had some stuff to do. There were action figures, there was an online game or whatever. So it is an NFT company, but it's maybe not the worst of that.
Oh yeah, no. To whom their own. I think the new technology or new concepts are always going to be criticized in that sense, and if there's success in there, that's cool. I think Gary V bought or he has his own TCG also. That's also like NFTs or something.
Like V pets.
Yeah, yeah. We're definitely in a card game boom right now. We have the Gundam game coming out too. Like same thing by the way. I've been trying to learn to play as many card games as possible. Zach and I vend right here in Southern California pretty much full time, and I think part of that, I think having access to the card games or in your vendor space is really important, especially if like if I'm buying in and selling Yu-Gi-Oh and One Piece, like I want to keep up with what's going on. One Piece just had a ban list, and I felt so big brained because like 2 weeks before, I was asking all my One Piece friends like, what should I not like buy in as a vendor, and they were telling me this is gonna get hit, this is gonna get hit. Oh, and they were so right. And that's always really,
Nice.
yeah, that's always really important. I think to also just have under your repertoire is being able to understand how other card games work and even how they apply to the card game that you're probably most passionate about. But would you say that Lorcana is something that you're more passionate about, or or do you like Magic more? I kind of want to get your experience on the Lorcana community overall.
Um, I have an interesting perspective on it. I think Lorcana's a lot harder than Magic the Gathering, which isn't what you think. But if you take like a turn one in Lorcana and a turn one in Magic, Lorcana's turn one was like easily 10 times harder. And when I'm teaching people to play, they feel it. They're like, okay, which of these cards should I ink? And I'm like, I don't know. But in Magic, it's
Yep.
like just play just play a land every turn and forget that you even did that because who even cares? And we'll keep going and keep learning. So I think Lorcana's harder. I think because of that, you're going to have it's more of a prestige game for me. So I think the number one Lorcana player in my mind, it's like, oh, that's the guy. And like the number one Magic player has also worked hard and is very good. But I mean, I just think Lorcana's a harder game. That being said, in terms of like casual gaming, I think Magic the Gathering just has the sauce. I think it feels cool when something cool happens in Magic the Gathering, and it feels like efficient and good when something cool happens in Lorcana, if that makes sense. So, I mean, you guys do financial stuff, right?
In a
In
sense,
term
yeah. But I mean, I guess vending, being in the vending space.
Like,
being in the
well, no,
vending space.
for margins, yeah, and then when we review every quarter, I at least for myself, I'm kind of looking at things more or less and what can I spend, and it's been growing because of Lorcana. So yeah, there's the game itself is thriving, especially being in like Southern California. Disneyland is nearby.
Oh,
We
nice.
do have like park releases, as that correlates with the LGS release at the same time, right? So you can also go to downtown Disney to get some product at the same time you can pick up your pre-orders from your local game store. And I'm actually curious, how is product over there in Atlanta? Are you able to find stuff on release? Is it difficult?
Atlanta's like the card game capital of like the world. Like the number one and number two, like TCG player traders are stores here in Atlanta. It's like Super Games and Wasteland Games. So I think I'm in like the mecca of card gaming availability. Well, I mean, look on week one or even day one of the new set, I brought a deck with 4 Scrooges, 4 Tamatoas. Like basically every card from the new set that was hard to get, and it wasn't hard for me to get at all. Like literally, I went to one store and they had almost all of it, and I traded the promo Baymaxes from Nationals for it, so I didn't even spend any money. And then one other store had like one extra Tamatoa that I needed. I mean, it's like legitimately pretty crazy. And then we have Charlie's Collectible Show is like you guys have a show like that in Southern California where it's like they're only open on the weekends and you can go and it's like a big collector.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
actually where Zach vends. It's Frankenstein's collectible show. It's like I believe they're pretty much the same thing.
The
Um,
the lore is that Charlie was inspired by Frank's, and Charlie
Okay.
owned a store called MTG Deals in San Gabriel Valley. And so, and Kevin, I believe, is familiar with MTG Deals.
oh
They
yeah,
used to have like case tournaments, and there's
those
like
are
a
like
YouTube video where they speed ran through their not speed ran, but they time elapsed their whole opening of their store, and they you bought and like a condensed like 5 to 10 minute video, all time lapsed, and it was just like how they built their store from the ground up, essentially. Not they had the foundation, they just had to like put all the tables and stuff, and it was huge. It was a huge store.
It was like an
And
airplane. It was like an airplane hangar or something, right? Like it was like ridiculously big.
it reminded me of something like that. So yeah, that's Charlie. That is Charlie, the owner of
Interesting.
MTG Deals, is the owner of Charlie's Collectible Show over there. So yeah, I guess it's the same thing. I've never been actually, and I'd like to actually visit. I want to kind of
Same.
go to another like 10, 15, 20K hopefully in Lorcana over there one day.
Yeah, same.
Definitely be worth. And for what it's worth, I have been to both. Frank's is a little bigger, but Charlie's is a little more. Frank's has a lot of people selling baseball cards, and Charlie's is like pretty much all TCG and like action figure vendors. But Frank's is bigger, but I mean it's similar in terms of card availability. Probably anybody that lives near or around Frank's doesn't have a problem, and this is similar.
Yeah, Zach is that guy that comes to locals Thursday night playing the 4 Oswald, 4 Scrooge, 4 Tamatoa on the weekend of release. It's the same thing. In general, Atlanta has just been blowing up. I mean, this isn't Lorcana related, but Atlanta has definitely just been blowing up, I think, the last couple years in terms of just popularity. There's the music scene's blowing up out there too. I know economically it's just booming, so that's really cool to see. It's also it makes sense why the card game industry is kind of blowing up or even moving more in that direction too. Sometimes it does feel like it's a little bit too competitive in California in terms of vending or even just in terms of playing these card games. There's a lot of, as they say, the sweats, which I love. I love competition, but it's not for everybody. Some people just want to play the casual, the pickup game every now and then and stuff. And sometimes you can't necessarily find that in Southern California because it seems like everybody wants to be a regional champion, which, you can't blame them, right? I definitely want to be a Lorcana DLC champ. You mentioned how you had the best players in Lorcana and how Lorcana is a harder game. You're actually best friends with one of the best players. A lot of people would say is the best player in Lorcana right now, and you guys do a podcast, a weekly Club Lorcana podcast together. If you guys didn't know, we are here sitting with Jeremy, but Bartarioni. Can I pronounce it like that? Do you mind if I?
Yeah, that's the best way to pronounce it. It sounds better when you put a little something
a little Italian
Yeah.
sauce. Bartarioni. Okay, heck yeah.
Fun fact in the lore on Lorcana Goons Twitter, the picture, Kevin's in a match, but you can also see Jeremy playing in a match.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, that was in Top
So-
Cut. That was in Top Cut of I forget which DLC. Don't tell me. Not Fort Worth.
no.
Was it Fort Worth? It was Fort Worth. Yeah, I believe it was Fort Worth. And it's funny because I didn't even notice it was you until Zach pointed it out, and I was like, oh no way. And I remember we both won our match. We both won our Top Cut match there, so we're on the lucky side.
I learned that when you commented, I think it was Zach probably on the Twitter that you'd love to schedule me for like a podcast to have a conversation. I was like, heck yeah, definitely. Let me click on these guys, add them, and I clicked, and then it comes up. It's a picture, and it's pretty close. It's a picture of you and me. I mean, Kevin, it's a picture of you and me.
Literally, it's both of us.
Right, and it's just both of us. And I was like, oh, well, I definitely should talk to these guys because I'm the face of it. That actually has happened to me twice because there's like a promotional picture that when Legion of Doom, or no, it was Labyrinth. When Labyrinth posted about being in Seattle, they posted a picture on Facebook that was like, yeah, all the boys just chilling in Seattle. And it's like all of them kind of at a table and then kind of next to them, but also closer to the camera. So in the definite like subject of the photo was just me. And I was like, hey guys, just so you know, I'm not on your team. I don't know if you want to pick a different picture. But no, that's happened to me. That's happened to me twice. But yeah, I'm big friends with Zan. I mean, Atlanta's just a crazy place to try to play Lorcana. You have Kendall Burdett, actual No I'm Not. You have Zan Syed. You have a couple other people. There's this guy, Rishi Chandri, and then Kevin is this other person that play in Atlanta, and they've day two'd like multiple DLC. You know what I mean? So I was at a local tournament last night, and there were 16 people there, and like 6 of them were day 2 DLC competitors, and 2 of them were like top 4, like went to nationals and stuff. So, and if Zan shows up, then there's your world's competitor. You know what I mean? So like trying to play in Atlanta is like, oh my God, every tournament, everybody's so good at this stupid game, and I never win. Come on.
Yeah, it's a good for the competition, man. Definitely good to get the practice in. I feel like we have so many local game stores over here where sometimes you don't get that. but sometimes you do. You know, the tournament we just had this past weekend, 90 some players. I got disrespected. I need to practice more for sure. I have not been playing as much as I should be playing. And yeah, there are a lot of great players there too. But really, what I enjoyed seeing was there some of the people that made top 8 were some like new faces. And I have to give them credit, man. Like a lot of these people have been going to way more local game stores, playing their weekly league nights than I have, and it's showing. You know, these people are making top 8, top 16 in these 95 player tournaments where same thing, you have several people who have made DLC day 2s multiple times, or you have like national top cut competitors like Sean Luring and people like that play at these locals, and you have your local game store enjoyer beating them in Swiss, and it's really cool to see. So for anybody watching, if this is like your competitive journey, even if you're playing for fun, I always tell people, like, never doubt yourself to be able to win any tournament. You know, even like the local casual can definitely win a big event. I've seen it happen before plenty of times in many card games, because at the end of the day, sometimes card games are just about luck. But this game is very hard. I love that you mentioned, I think Zan mentioned it too when we interviewed him for this podcast, that the turn one, and Brian Cortate said it, the turn one in Lorcana is so important. And I tell everybody when they're learning the game, like, your inking decision is going to dictate like whether or not you win the round, pretty much, because you have to know what to ink for the matchup. You have to respect, okay, this person only revealed blue cards so far. They're either on Sapphire Steel or Sapphire Ruby. What do I ink? And that's like a really crucial part to learn in this game. That's very different from other card games, right?
Yeah, I really want to give like a special shout out though to all the like the Fight Club grinders, because like the person that actually finished in rank 1 of during Azurite season made it to the day 2 of Continentals, winning their LCQ. And a lot of people I know that were like playing very, strictly, and shout outs to him, because he made a separate account to be on the draw only and just play going second. And that's crazy dedication to like being the best player you can be, because I think most of us can agree, like, when you're going first, you do have like a slightly increased win percentage. It's going to happen more often than not. Not saying you're always going to win going first, but that is very like impressive to like condense all your like data on just going second, because most of the time your decision making going first is going to be like, sticking to your normal game plan. So yeah, shout outs to all those people that are constantly getting better. And that's why I say the meta evolves every day.
When I said Lorcana is a prestige game, I mean, let's just talk about being on the draw. What it does in Lorcana is, people say it reduces your win rate, which is like kind of true, but the real thing that's going on there is, when you're on the draw, your game plan for every matchup changes slightly, because the context of the cards in your deck change slightly. Like a Madam Mim Fox does a really different thing on the play than it does on the draw a lot of the time, right? A lot of the time on the draw it trades, and on the play it kills and sticks. So if all of your cards behave differently in all these different scenarios, your game plan inevitably shifts. So when I say Lorcana is a prestige game and a skill game, it's partly because I'm talking to Zan Syed all the time, right? He's my best friend. We talk every day. And he's like, yeah, on the draw, you want to be doing da, 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 da. And I'm just like, man, so many players don't even realize that, like, your whole plan's different. It doesn't matter if you're Amber Steel has one of the biggest divides, by the way, in how you want to play on the play versus the draw. But that's like, when I say Lorcana is the prestige game, it's because people are going to rise up to the top and win consistently over other card games because they understand that. I mean, if you look at the ladder, I'm so glad that the ladder in every digital client of Lorcana has tracked MMR, because this is one of those games where, unlike maybe Magic or like Yu-Gi-Oh, that ladder is the best skilled players. And it doesn't matter if you've never heard of one and he just grinds online all day, because that is going to be the guy. If he ever does show up to or the girl, if they ever do show up to a real tournament, it's over. Either they're going to win. And, that's one of the things I like about Lorcana, but that's also one of the, like, oh boy, this game's super tough, right? Like,
I get a lot of people come in.
They go to my locals.
Go ahead,
they go to my locals. That's all I was going to say. that person number one, that they go to my locals too. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very tough.
Well, they're not number one now, so I'm just letting you know that.
No, of the
yeah,
Azurite
yeah,
season,
yeah.
not of the current season.
Shout out
Correct.
Molstar. Shout out Molstar. I got a lot of people come in to the booth that I vend at. So I'm at like a mini. So if Frank's is like the big one and Charlie's is like the slightly smaller one, I'm at like a mini version of both of them. It's called Ninja Exchange in Carlsbad, and it's same thing, inspired by both those places. I'll get a lot of people come in, obviously playing a bunch of different card games, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, blah blah blah. And one of the questions I often get is like, "Oh, what is this game? How do you play this game? Is it easy?" And people just assume it's easy because there's Mickey Mouse on the cards, you know. And I let people know like this game is super easy to learn. Like I've taught so many people how to play with just pack rush, but the moment I give them meta decks, and I give these meta decks to like actual players, like people who grind other card games, they start coming back and being like, "How does this work? How does this work? What do I do here? What do I do here?" And I'm like, "Bro, there's so many things in this card game. Like I can't tell you how that works unless I know everything that happened from turn 1 to turn 5 or whatever turn you're on, because I don't know what they inked. I don't know what colors they're playing. I don't know what information they've revealed. And there's just so many layers to this game. But I think that's what makes it so fun for me too, is being able to just sit there and think, okay, on turn 2, I can play this. I can play a 2 cost me, or I can play 2 1-drops. I'm going first. I'm going second. So that's going to dictate. I'm playing against Amber Steel, so I should play 2 1-drops instead. I just love the amount of layers that are in this game. And then on top of all that, I literally get to play Baymax in my green yellow dog deck. I think that's the best. So as much as I do like the competitiveness, I do think that there is a lot of like interest for just like casual playing too. But the amount of layers, man, like you said, it does feel does feel like there's prestige, and it does feel good when you win. It feels very rewarding compared to some other card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, where I play this card and my opponent interrupted me 3 times and now I just can't play the game.
Definitely feels a lot better than Yu-Gi-Oh! But even like Magic, there's times where you'll show up with the mono red aggro deck in Magic and you'll play all your matches, you'll win the tournament, and people will be like, "Congrats!" And you'll be like, "I'll be honest with you, a couple people missed their land on turn 2, and a couple people just were the bad matchup where they didn't have early interaction. I kind of just got a free one today." And you don't get that in Lorcana. You don't get the free ones.
No,
Not very often. Go ahead.
no, there's a lot of different cards to kind of like, I guess, play around now. There's a lot of different cards people are exploring too, and not every deck is built the same. I think even when you look at color combinations, we're seeing a lot of different strategies between color combos. So you won't even have perfect information into some matchups or into some colors. Like you have to wait until like turn 4 to find out like what kind of blue steel deck you're playing against.
Yeah, I think
Or
keeping up with deck lists helps a lot. Sometimes, like when I see somebody ink a blue card, but they play Mulan, the Disguised Soldier, I already know you're playing the Kiwi deck, you know? Same thing with like other little cards. Like I've seen people like ink a Ratigan or something, and like the red Ratigan, or ink a Maui Shark in red purple, and I'm like, oh, okay, you're probably playing a red purple burn deck. But that also like takes time out of your day to have to like look up the information, keep up with deck lists and stuff like that. And if you're not really doing that, then you are gonna get got by some of these strategies. So that helps a lot. Plenty of content creators are doing deck list stuff, and if you guys want to go if you guys want to go check out Jeremy and Zan's podcast, be sure to check Zanside's YouTube channel. They upload every week, and Zach and I are pretty big fans of the Club Lorcana podcast. I've mentioned it before to Zan, that I just really appreciate that he shares his perspective on the game so publicly. And you guys just share your deck lists and just talk about like literally what you guys are thinking about for the event that you're gonna play that weekend. And so many people will just gatekeep information in card games, and I've always just got to appreciate you guys for not doing that.
It's just the perfect Lorcana podcast to watch on 1.5 speed. But no, I honestly get a lot of information from that. And again, kudos to you and Zan. But yeah, that deck list that you actually won with, I don't I think it's changed now, right? Like you said, Blue Steel has different versions. You're on like version 4, or Zan's on version 4 while you're on version 7. I think that's what you said. So like, yeah, what version do you think you're on now? Because like for me, I'm probably on version like 6, close to 7, almost there.
So Zan and I talked about it afterwards, and Zan's versions are the ones that he makes public. So even though Zan's on version 3 and I'm on version 7, Zan's actually on version like 20. You know what I mean? But he just calls it version 3. And my version is just whichever one I've set up to jam on the digital client or whatever. we're still in a reactive moment to basically blue-red rising up. So I think that your blue steel decks are the ones taking that into account right now. It might be a little bit of more aggressive blue steel decks that are better at beating these blue-red decks. If you look at the deck that I won with at SSG, that is like the epitome of a week 1 deck. It's got all the power, no consideration for anything in the metagame. I mean, Oswald is really like a good example of like, how could you get away with playing Oswald? Well, they lived for 3 or 4 turns. Now, if I'm playing an Oswald, it dies instantly to their Bell at the Storm Rage on. So that Oswald mostly just exists because there's not a mirror match to be super worried about. And so that's just like a pretty natural progression of why Oswald got pushed out. And we all kind of knew that it was going to get pushed out. So right now, the blue steel decks that I'm playing are a little more aggressive. I'm actually moving on to some more like aggressive purple decks. I've been testing a lot of Chris Anderson's purple steel locations decks. I just think those have a pretty good matchup into blue steel and blue red, even the aggressive versions of blue steel, because you do have Madam and the Fox, which is really good against them, especially on the play, not so much on the draw, because you have to trade with the Smee, but you do have to trade with the Smee, so keep that in mind.
I'm so glad you said that. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I need to touch on that because I've been saying it on so many videos. It just feels like we're in a 4 fox 4 crab format. If you can shove that into your purple decks, it is so good. Just for what you said, when you're going on the play, you have one way to use those cards, and when you're going on the draw, you have an entirely different way to use those cards. And it's just so important to know how to use them, especially like with the way the meta's turning out.
The situation comes up, it's the big skill divide in Lorcana. You have to know what the openers are. You have to know why you take certain lines versus some decks versus others. And the best way to do it is to get reps. That's why, and it's so crazy because, if you talk about like, you have to memorize your possible openers. Like if they have a tap Smee and you have a Fox, what are you supposed to do? It's something that you should memorize. And if you said that in Magic the Gathering, because the game is so much higher variance, people would be like, hey man, listen, you're crazy. And it just is a little different in Lorcana.
Yeah, I'm a big purple enjoyer. Like amethyst is like one of my favorite color. I think in the game, so I tend to gravitate towards like amethyst decks. I was playing purple steel for this weekend's event, and the person who ended up in top 8 with their purple steel build was playing a much more aggressive version, playing Maleficent biding her time, 4 snake, 4 fox, stuff like that. And I think they were able to really benefit off of kind of metagaming the situation. And a lot of red blue. A lot of red blue was represented at that tournament, and I think it was like 3 or 4 red blue decks that were in our top 8 for that day. So yeah, like you were saying, it is the rise of red blue again. Maybe I might switch back to ruby amethyst. Shout out to all the ruby amethyst enjoyers who keeping that deck alive, because I think it's very good. You said purple steel locations catches your attention. What do you think of the ruby amethyst location deck that Terrace Black has been promoting, or just locations in general going into this meta?
I talk to Terrace a lot. I host a space on X every Monday at 8:30. That's Eastern time, so that's been tough for my California people. But we're trying to figure it out.
No wonder I don't ever see it. I was about to say, like, okay, no wonder I never see it. I'm not up at 5:30 in the morning, at least not on Twitter.
You're not able to listen to them like after you made them, right? Like unless you record it yourself.
I'm sort of torn between that as like a creator. I could get you guys' opinion on that, because my thing is that I want people to be able to sort of say whatever they want, and for like maybe sometimes unpopular opinions to come up in the space. And I feel like recording would take away from that. A good example is the guy who drew 8 cards off of A Whole New World against Zan in the tournament was actually in my space on Monday morning. And we got to ask him everyone was very fair to him, in my opinion. Everybody was really, kind and nice and civil. But we had some pretty hard questions, right? We're all trading card game players. You looked at your hand 3 times. How do you not know you drew 8? Stuff like that. We got to talk to him about it. And I think if that whole thing is recorded, he just doesn't jump in. You know what I mean? So I right now they're not recorded. I'm thinking of keeping them that way. But I do regret that we can't involve people in California. It's actually a pretty good time for Germany, so DKP is always in the space. But
that's fun. Yeah, that's fun. I guess, and from my personal opinion. This is just my opinion. I like the idea of having it recorded, just because with this conversation that you just brought up was kind of an important one. And like I'm not really fond of. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really fond of like Twitter as a platform. I've never really been fond of that platform, but like especially now that I've been into the Lorcana and this content creator, I've had to use it. I've had to like be active on there, and I think a lot of my issue with Twitter is that like it's a big space for everyone to just express themselves, and it stays like it like spreads very quickly in the community, like almost like a wildfire, right? So and when Zan first tweeted the video of what happened, like my initial reaction was to like and retweet it. And then like I get off Twitter, and by the time I check Twitter again, it's just like everybody's talking about it from different perspectives, and it was a little hard to keep up with. And because Twitter's just kind of everywhere, there's no groups, it's just your feed. It was so hard to keep up with that I was kind of losing track of what was going on, and I didn't even really know you were doing a what do you call it again? A space.
Space.
Yeah, I didn't know you were doing a space at all. So when I woke up like the next day or that morning, I just saw that there was a conversation that was had, but I couldn't see or hear any of the conversation. And like I know you're saying it's fair, and I obviously believe everyone who's been speaking. But there's just a lot of difference of opinion even after the space where I was like, I wish I could hear it, But and then to say to what you said about like if you record it, are people not going to be as genuine? Honestly, I think that if someone's not going to be genuine, then they weren't going to do it regardless of whether the recording button is there or not. I think most people definitely understand that the digital footprint is there, and I'm pretty sure. I don't know if there's a way for you to just make it public now. But I'd like to think that if someone's gonna do something in an online space, and then they already kind of have their not they already have like their decision made whether or not they're going to be honest or not. You know what I mean? So I like the idea of possibly having it available. And just on a pure like black and white level of like view count and monetary stuff. Like if you ever want to monetize that kind of stuff, I think you're just going to get way more views if you have it publicly available after. Like there's just so many more views from not just California but even West Coast people, Texas, Seattle, stuff like that. That you'll probably just get way more eyes and heads into the space.
Yeah, people don't like to present cases to me because you're going to be so unsatisfied with what I'm about to say, but I think you totally convinced me, and I'm going to try recording it next week.
Oh heck yeah, heck yeah, man. Yeah. Like I said, like I'll for sure listen to them afterward. Because I very much enjoy listening to the podcast that you guys do. So if you're telling me that you're gonna make more content, and you're telling me that you have not been sharing extra content with me, I'm offended as a Californian, because because I don't know if I can wake up at 5. I'm already wake up at 6, but like 30 minutes earlier, oh my gosh, my dog. No, I don't know if my dog can take that. But yeah, man. I do want to touch a little bit more about the whole drawing the extra card off whole new world. In your opinion, what was the conclusion after the space, after everything? How do you feel? Because I know you hosted the space. How does Zan feel? If you don't mind like speaking for him, I guess.
He came over to my house after, and we talked about it here at the kitchen. So I'm not going to say anything that Zan wouldn't want, that hasn't already said, basically, because he makes his opinions extremely prevalent. I think that the best way to talk about it is to just kind of keep to the facts and let the people draw their own conclusions. So the fact of the matter is that there's a percent that this guy cheated. That he's noticed that the most likely explanation is that he noticed that he accidentally drew 8 cards. Probably he noticed that after he played the Bare Necessities, if he noticed it at all. That's probably when he noticed it and decided to try to keep playing. So that's like what the cheat was. The whether or not you believe he cheated or he made a mistake, that's going to be up to you to find out. A lot of people came out and said that he was a really good guy. To me, that's kind of like not here nor there, because everyone would say that Alex Bertoncini was a really cool and good guy, but he was also a famous card game cheater. So there you go. But whether or not he cheated, the takeaways is that we as a community need a judge program. We need a system of rules. We probably need a system of rules that discourages this, because Zan has said right now, with the way the rules are set up, if you are a card game cheater, here's what you need to know about Lorcana. You can draw extra cards until the first time you get caught, and then play the rest of your tournament. So you might go an entire tournament drawing extra cards, and it just doesn't. It's too free for cheaters. Is his opinion? It's definitely my opinion. I'm anti-cheater. I know that's crazy, but I'm anti-cheater. And And right now Lorcana's a little too free, and I think that something needs to be done, and it should come from Ravensburger, that makes it not free to cheat. It's not, we don't have controversial opinions about this. They're not even very exciting, right? Zan feels like, obviously we can't read this guy's mind, so let's just not even try to do that. What this guy did the result should have been a game loss, because he gained way too big of an advantage. Zan actually said if you wanted to do it more lenient, and this was wild, this was like, my birthday was Sunday, so this was like deep into my birthday party. He said this, and I was like, what? But he actually said that he would have been fine if the judge had gotten the 8 cards that he drew and shuffled them up and revealed the card at random. And if it was a bare necessities, he gets a game loss because he shouldn't have had that card and he got way too much information. But if it was any other card, then the bare then that card is shuffled back in and they just keep playing, because then he would have had the bare necessities anyway. And I was like, Zan, that's crazy. You're crazy. That's a crazy thing to say. But yeah, I mean, that's just my the full opinion on cheaters. It's not controversial. I think that it can't be free to cheat. Otherwise, your card game will attract cheaters.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it will attract cheaters. If you're not going to at least punish that type of, let's even say like that type of those type of actions with a game loss, because in pretty much every other card game, that is just a straight up game loss. You know what I mean? It's I understand what Ravensburg and Team Lorcana wants to do, and not like punish people for making like honest mistakes, but there is also like a layer to that of like, well, how much can you just play the fool? You know, like how ignorant can you really act to the idea of like, oh, I accidentally did this, you know what I mean? And that's also not okay. Because it's not the first time, obviously, that this stuff like this has happened. It's not the second, it's not the third. What's crazy is that after this whole thing happened, I started reading more and more horror stories from people's experiences at DLCs, big tournaments, that have also had to go through this type of thing. And I remember talking to someone, I'm not going to say who, but they told me this story before they even made it public, about how at their, I think it was Nationals or DLC, I'm not sure, but they were in Top Cut and their opponent did a very similar thing, but really tried to be sneaky about it, like through the whole like turns 1 through 4, and ended up resulting in an entire like disqualification based off what the head judge said. So one of the issues I have is like there's so many different like avenues for like these judges to make these rulings, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's not like an official judge program on like what needs to be done when these things happen. And I know a lot of us just want that to be we want to have a judge program, you know what I mean? We need to be able to have a consistent precedent for stuff like this, right?
The crazy thing about this is that it's a big issue. It's a scary issue, and the thing about the issue is it seems so much bigger than it is. Because if you hear about all these stories about people cheating in Lorcana, the next time somebody like draws an extra card against you at whatever high stakes tournament, you're like, and it could be a total accident, but you're like, this is what I read about. You know what I mean? So it's an issue that even gets bigger. It even has like a phantom like effect where it's like bigger than it actually is, but that makes it worse or whatever. The other thing about the issues is like the thing that I just said that was like non-controversial is unanimous. So it's like it's an issue with the unanimous solution. We're just all just waiting on when, and this is goes back to when is there going to be war? We need to hear from the company that does the trading card game, please, and I love that company. They've done a great job, with the exception of I think this is a time where they need to be a little faster to move. I think bans, they've been pretty appropriate. I think let decks have their day in the sun, which is why right now I would say in the metagame, the ban is either popsicle or nothing. But on this issue, just be fast to move. We've modified the rules guide. It's game loss for this. This is the database that we're going to use to keep track of disqualifications. Carry on. It's a quick fix, and everyone agrees on it. So I don't see what's taking so long.
Yeah. Other card games too, when I've gone to other tournaments, there's almost like a precedent where like if you do something illegal, whether it was intentional or not, you're going to be penalized. Not to create a feeling that you're gonna walk on eggshells, but like proper procedure is important when you play competitive card games, and it's not to take away anyone's experience, but like rules have to be in place. There needs to be clear penalties for actions taken, minors, majors, warnings, infractions, game losses, match losses, disqualifications. It needs to go to different level. It needs to be taken to different levels, and they've done it before. They at Continentals there was disqualifications from people in the main event, so they've done it before, and it's not something that I feel like it should be very loosely taken about. So you're right. Like if they don't have a judge program soon, there needs to be something, said maybe from these larger scale tournaments that we have in our community. Maybe there needs to be some sort of clear guidelines of what will happen if such happens, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, everyone makes mistakes. I've made some pretty dumb mistakes at tournaments too. Like I've literally gotten game losses, DQs for similar things in a sense. But I think one of the biggest differences is that like I grew up knowing these things. Like I grew up with people who were competitive players who are much older than me, but they were telling me like, hey, if someone, make sure you're always counting the cards in your opponent's hand. Make sure you're always asking like, can I see your grave or your discard? Can I see your your notes or whatever if you're allowed note taking, stuff like that. And that also led me to understand like if I make a mistake, the best course of action is to acknowledge the mistake and be honest, because the last thing I want to ever to happen to me is just get either DQ'd from the game itself, because some people just get banned from playing these games. So yeah, I think a lot of that is kind of a learning curve for some new players, like you were saying, Zach. You don't want anyone to ever feel like they're walking on eggshells, but playing competitively, you do have to respect the written rules of the game like to the T, because that's part of sportsmanship. You know what I mean? And I think sportsmanship is extremely important to a lot of us. I know it is to me. I don't play sports no more or nothing like that. This is my sport, so I want it to go as like clean cut as possible. You know what I mean?
I mean, 100%. I know exactly what you mean.
But speaking of bans, let's move on, because we were talking about this. I was talking about this on the way home from my tournament. You said that if it's popsicle or bust for like a ban list, like, do you think we'll ever get a ban list? And do you think Sapphire needs any cards that are banned?
It's tricky because I like the metagame right now. I like how it's shaken out. I kind of talked about it right now. It's just like a healthy rock, paper, scissors. I think card games are more fun when something powerful is happening in them. I think you can see some card games that are like really cautious or banned to oblivion. I think even Lorcana was that for a long time, where it was like, you play your guy, you try to draw some cards, but nothing like broken is happening. But I think card games are a little more fun where like, this deck steals all your lands or whatever. It's like cool. So as long as the metagame is healthy and diverse, I don't want there to be ban lists. If you are going to ban anything from right now, I think it should be Popsicle. And here's why. Because the format isn't rotating. Every item card you print, card that cares about items or sacrifices an item or whatever, has to travel through the lens of, is it broken with Popsicle? And the answer is just yes too often to allow that. So I think you ban that card. It's the enabler, and people are sad that they don't have Popsicle. But suddenly, Hiram's not a big deal, because could you imagine playing Hiram without Popsicle? Probably not. What are you sacrificing? It's something that you paid a good amount of ink for, right? Tamatoa is not that big a deal, right? Because you can't. The crazy thing about Popsicle is that you can put it in the discard card pile for free. So that card, it's so unique. It's the only card in Lorcana that moves zones so effortlessly. You pay 1 to get it from your hand to the battlefield, pay 0 to get it there. You can recur it with a Tamatoa so easily. Like that, if you just think about card games in the abstract, you guys have all been playing card games for a long time. This card flies everywhere in a way that like no other cards are doing.
Yeah, that's
Kevin,
true.
this is like Sinister Serpent for like GOAT format.
Yeah, no. You know what's funny is that like, yeah, everyone always says like it's Flavor Sham, it's Lucky Dime, it's Tamatoa, but no, yeah, that's a very strong point. It actually just might be Popsicle that's the problem, because it's the fact that it replaces itself. You don't gotta pay anything extra just to heal a character. Like even Fortisphere, you even gotta pay 1 extra ink to get Fortisphere into the discard pile, bro. Like Popsicle's just free. That's
like the point too. Like how good is Bell without Popsicle, right? So like so many cards are completely almost removed from a conversation of a ban or an errata if you just ban Popsicle. So yeah, it's a very easy solution. Takes zero, almost zero effort to just ban one card, and you completely, warp the way the meta changes. I think Sapphire completely goes not south, but has to take a completely different direction. Sapphire Steel has Fortisphere, and that's a little bit of a balance. You have to pay 1 to banish it. I think it has to have a character in play because something has to be chosen for a bodyguard. If I remember correctly, unlike Popsicle, I think you can just banish it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. Let me know, guys, if I'm wrong on that. But you can't
In
just
the
banish it for free.
in the Lorcana rules, it depends on where there's like a comma in all those cards. I can look it up real quick. But it depends on where the comma is. There's a lot of things where as long as it's not part of the cost, you don't have to do it. For example, you can let the Storm Rage on an empty board. I think Fortisphere is probably the same. It depends. There's like a comma after either pay 1 or choose a creature to get bodyguard. So it depends. If it's part of the cost, you which it doesn't sound like it is. You wouldn't need a creature, or you would need a creature, but if it's not, then you wouldn't.
Got it.
Spicy hot take. I think the only other card that I would just want out of the card game is a whole new world. And it's not even that good of a card. I understand that it's not like meta breaking. I just hate the feeling of my opponent resolving 3 to 4 whole new worlds back to back to back in one game. That is like the only time I ever get tilted in Lorcana. Like, I don't care if my opponent goes like Popsicle Flavor Sham 4 times in one game. You can do that, buddy. But if you're gonna resolve multiple whole new worlds and you haven't discarded a single extra whole, just a perfect sequence, I have a bad day.
I've also traumatized Kevin enough times with that too, so it's a little bit of a trauma dump from Kevin's side here.
Yeah.
A whole new world is in my like power 9 of top Lorcana cards in terms of like this is fundamentally pretty broken, right? The fact that you can exert a creature to do it makes it really strong. There's a class of cards that they could print. And the class of cards read like this. It's like whenever your opponent would draw like an extra card that isn't the first one they draw for turn, instead they don't, or instead you get something. I think a class of cards like that would push a whole new world over the edge. But right now that doesn't exist in Lorcana, so I think that the effect is like fundamentally like kind of fine. Like if you're doing that, then your whole deck's about it, right? Like Steel Song is all about dumping them out, a whole new worlding, dumping them out before your opponent gets to play all their cards, which is ultimately like kind of a fine strategy. I think the trouble you're gonna have is something like, okay, since I have this 3 ink character that says whenever you would draw a card, instead like an extra card, I gain a lore instead. That's going to be where you have a big problem with a whole new world.
Yeah, it does enable some other strategies too to like the Jafar, for example. Like you do gain a lore for every time you draw while it's exerted. So like there's cards that do enable a whole new world to have that kind of strategy. It's just they're not popularized. But Amber Seal seems to be the only deck that I know that's popularizing whole new world, and I think Lamb Chops also plays a whole new world in his blue steel deck. So just some whole new world enjoyers still out there.
It's a good card. It's a good card. I think it's one of the only other few cards that I think is like really, really, like you said, like power level, in the game. I know everyone was calling for Diablo to get banned last format. I thought that was kind of silly. Like, bro, just brawl it. You know what I mean? But yeah, like I don't think there's that much like in Lorcana where it seems like too overpowered. Because like we were saying, it still feels like a pretty diverse metagame. You know, it just you kind of have to play around what you think people are gonna play in that tournament. I think. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of Sapphire. There's a lot of Sapphire in this meta. And is it a problem? I don't think so. But yeah, I do think that for some players or maybe even the casual enjoyer, it gets a little stale, you know, to have to play against like 3 or 4 Sapphire decks back to back. Or one of my friends was saying that he's glad there's no DLCs right now because he can't imagine watching a whole DLC stream of just 9 rounds of Sapphire decks.
Sapphire decks getting beat up by aggressive decks, Sapphire decks fighting each other. It's like hard for me to relate. I can't. How could this be stale? It's like 3 weeks old. We haven't even, and the decks have been different every weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Like 2 weeks ago, nobody was playing red blue, and now everybody's kind of switching up to unconventional tool bell combo, and I think that's really creative too. But if we removed Popsicle from the game, I think unconventional tool would be broken, right? I mean, at least I think so. It'd be like one of the cool cards you could play instead, to at least try and generate some extra value.
It'd be pretty
Does
good.
it reduces it by 2, right? The next item you play.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't know what turn 1 combo you do, but at least on turn 2 you got some spicy plays.
Definitely turn 2 is a little better. On turn 1, you could do some things like play a coil. The issue with that is, if you've ever been, we tested it. Obviously, we tested it as soon as we saw that it was possible. And if somebody goes turn 1, unconventional tool, play a bell, play a coil, and you ask them how many cards are in their hand, then the answer is like 2 or 3.
Because they have to ink a card.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden you just like win the resource game against those decks.
And you're like, well, I have 7, so I think I can beat the 3/3.
Real quick, man, you mentioned testing. Any advice for people who wanna like get a little bit better at the game? What are some ways that you test, either with Zan or with your other homies? I know you said you go to locals, your local game store to play, but like, what's your like prime way to test?
I mean, get a matchup that you want to focus on. Get a friend who's willing to do it with you. Get the 2 decks and alternate, play, draw. Whoever the deck you want to like test the most. So usually you're playing your new idea versus, like, for example, in this case, let's say I have a purple green aggressive deck that I want to see. I want to see how good it is against blue red. So you put the best blue-red player that is in your friend group on the other side. You play the purple-green deck. You alternate play-draw, and you got to get 10 on the play, 10 on the draw. And every game you got to talk about, why did you win? How did that feel? Is that something that's going to happen frequently in this game, do you think? Do you think that, like, most of the time when these decks play against each other, the coil into Sisu is going to happen? Or did you high roll, right? Did you top deck the card you needed 3 cards in a row? Like talk about how the games feel, be ejected, and like get a session like that in. I think Lorcana is not a game that you get to do the same shortcuts as in every other card game, right? You're not going to just get lucky and win a tournament in Lorcana. So people always hate my advice because it's like, yeah, you got to put in a lot of work, but you gotta focus test matchups, and you gotta have intelligent conversations about how those matchups feel, and like, okay, so this is a pretty bad matchup. Well, how do I if I only win 1 out of 10 times? The cool thing about it is, what do those 1 out of 10 games look like? The Lorcana mulligan is so forgiving that I can really try to have that game. If I'm like, well, actually, if I go turn 1 this, turn 2 this, turn 3 this, then I'm in a good spot, and I ink these cards. You can like try to do it in a tournament. You'll win a lot of the times. I think that's really what separates Zan from, like, for example, like the person watching this, right? Is that like Zan has a bad matchup, and he's like, actually, it's a good matchup because I just play it like this, and they haven't tested it 100 times, so they don't even know what to do when I do this. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
that's weird.
I love that you said that. I've said this many a times. Zach once told me, when you're playing Lorcana, any card game, what you want to do is you want to think about what your opponent's next turn is going to be, and you want to make it as awkward for them as possible. And I've just taken that. I've just taken that advice to the core values of how I play card games now, because I really try and think like, okay, what are you going to do turns 3, 4, 5, and what can I do to throw you off your game? Just like you said, this is a bad matchup, but not everybody has played it as many times as I've had. Not many people are going to develop a strategy for these scenarios because of how many times I've practiced to do this. And let's say I don't even have a strategy ready, I can think or assume what your possible best play is and try my best to make you play off curve and make you play some random cards from your hand, make you ink a card in your hand that you probably weren't going to ink because of what I did instead. And I think that goes a really long way. So thanks for saying that. Thanks for giving that advice.
So the story is, in Dallas I day 2'd, and you get your matchup, your first match of day 2. in the nighttime, right? You get what your opponent's playing, and I'm playing against RMB. Okay, this is Team Labyrinth's RMB, and he's on like a blue steel deck with Argus, and I'm on red purple, kind of like a standard deck. My tech that I had that weekend was Peter Pan Shadow Finder. This is when you and I were sitting next to each other.
Yeah, yeah. And I was playing red purple too, by the
way. Great. But so we tested the matchup overnight, and let me tell you, it was horrible for me. I was winning like, we'd play 10 games and I'd win 1 or whatever. And we found out that every once in a while, the blue steel deck can brick on a whole new world, because a lot of the times they throw them back in the altar. If they do that, you have some really good cards, which is that your Peter Pan Shadow Finder functions as a spell book, basically. They don't have any evasive, so every turn it just turns sideways. A lot of their removal only does 2 damage, so it can like survive a lot of that. We learned even that like if you pick up a Peter Pan Shadow Finder with 2 damage on it with a snake or a fox and then replay it, that's fine. That's like a good play, because this matchup is so abysmal for you that like you need to have that consistent clock, and it can like if it picks up a damage because of a Tinkerbell or whatever, and then you like pick it up and replay it, suddenly it is again immortal. So we learned that in the night, and like, you know, so we had 2 game plans going in for Dallas. The game plan 1 was get in RMB's head, which I did. I'm a genius psychological mastermind. I got right into his head. Plan 2 was you know, try to clock them with the Shadow Finder. Don't throw the Shadow Finders back. They're actually better than you think they are. Forget about Flynn Rider. You know, just ink it on turn 1. Just forget about it. Don't even try to do it. And then use your foxes and crabs to sort of fight on the battlefield. You know, take out the Tinkerbells and the Argus or whatever. Take those trades or whatever. And the whole time you're fighting for battlefield dominance, the Peter Pan's taken away, because they might whole new world, and if they do that, they play a bunch of guys or whatever, and then you play a bunch of guys and make the trades or whatever. And if the whole time that's happening, you're like gaining a lore every turn, those are the only games you win. And RMB didn't have the luckiest couple of hands, and I won completely. What we were all dooming all night. We were like, well, nope, it's not going to happen. But we got there. So that's the kind of thinking that is gets you ahead. You know, like Zan Syed, you know, he talks about his streaks. He's like, I'm 50-0, and you're like, well, nobody's 50-0. But then he'll show you his record on Lorcanito, and he's 50-0, and you're like, I have 2 questions. 1, what about like bad matchups? And then 2, the digital client didn't crash for you. It crashes for me every 3 games. How did you even manage to not just, I lose all the time to just not even connecting. I couldn't believe it. So like, you know, just stuff like that. That's how you get better. You talk about the matchups, you learn how to win the bad ones.
Yeah, I really like that you have friends that were able to build a deck for you the night before, and you guys play tested. Zach's done that before with us too, which really helps a lot. Like you have to, I mean, you have to develop a social circle that's gonna want to see you win also. So like never play card games with people that don't want to see you win. First of all, you know what I mean? That's super important.
That's true. And when you say resources to build the deck, you know, a pack of playing cards at Walgreens is $4, so that's $8, and you can use a Sharpie and write the name. Because, like I don't like when people, you know, talk about like, oh, how could I? I mean, I couldn't have done that. I didn't have those cards, so I couldn't have tested about it. What do you mean? You couldn't Sharpie that on a bunch of cards and like jam it all night with one other person? Like, you have to think, what all am I investing to go to this DLC? It's usually a pretty sizable investment. You usually have flights, hotel, food for the weekend, entry into the tournament. You know, you're putting $300-400 up, but before you've ever even bought a deck. That's, in my mind, an investment that I want to respect. So I want to give it my all, you know, because I got to respect my $400 or whatever that it cost me to be here. So, you know, practicing the night before, that's part of respecting my $400. You think I didn't want to just go to a pizza place and then go back and hear everybody's bad beat stories and go to sleep? Of course I wanted to, but we stayed up till 1 a.m. until we had to get good sleep or whatever, playing the matchup, because, you know, I got to respect the money that I spent to get here.
And it's worth it. And it's always worth it, right? How did you fit? What was your like final placing at that DLC?
I died to Ed Chu in top 32.
And he won that one, right? Like he got first. That's the one he got first. Well, at least you lost to the winner. That's something to tell yourself. That's what I've been telling myself. But yeah, I also had to play against Sapphire Steel that day. And my strategy was they're gonna play Argus when I play Flynn, so I have to find my teeth and ambitions. And I found it twice, and it was awesome because my Flynn went off. My Flynn went off turns 2, 3, 4. And that was pretty cool. But then I died to double triple Bucky the next round, and I feel like I don't know what to do in that scenario. At that point, I'm just blaming the one card that got eroded. But yeah, I do think it's important to understand like how do you win those hard matchups? What's causing you to win and lose those games? I really appreciate that advice because anytime I talk to somebody about card games, like I just want to learn. I just want to learn more and more because there's always going to be someone better than you, in my opinion. And I think that you need to be able to have an open mind to learn every day and just in life in general, especially with these card games, man.
Yeah, it's something I also feel like it's really important. Some people in their local area struggle to find a good testing circle or just kind of like be around enough people to play. When you go to big tournaments or when you go to your local area, just observe the better players there. Watch them play. Take that time just to see what they do and repeat those patterns because that's something I do when I don't know a color combination or a deck too well. I watch my friends that are like masters in those colors. I watch them play. I ask them why do they do what they did, and I objectively say like, why did you want to do that? Because of this, and they give me like their reasoning. I'm like, okay, I don't even think about it like that, so I need to like take a step back into what goes on in my head and just reevaluate my thought process for different color combinations. And it definitely it's happened a couple of times too. I'm not a red blue player, so I ask all the red blue players in my circle any questions about red blue. And that's just kind of like my crutch is that I'm not playing every deck consistently enough to just know ins and outs. And I think I'm watching people play it enough just to know how to beat it with the decks that I choose to pilot.
Yeah, man. We have been chatting it up with Jeremy Bartarioni. I gotta say it like that, man. But if you guys want to keep listening to his advice, Zansayed's advice, be sure check out the Club Lorcana podcast on Zansayed's channel. Jeremy, do you have a channel anytime soon you're gonna be working on, or are you just gonna be doing the content with Zan? You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram for his Lorcana insight, by the way.
Wrapping up, but I just want to say that this is sort of Zan and I's. We weren't ever supposed. We're done with Magic. We thought we were done with card games.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't really want to become content creators in this space. So, I don't really have a channel. I focus a lot on comedy. Now I'm giving a lot to Lorcana because it's become so much of a bigger thing. But yeah, I have a space on X that I'm going to start recording, and it's Mondays at 8:30 Eastern time. I don't have a YouTube channel that I have right now. No real plans to do it. I mean, Zan and I, but mostly Zan, are kind of in that spot where, we quit being pro Magic players. We got quote unquote real jobs, right? I work in an office most days. If I don't work from home, Zan works in an office as well. We thought we were done with the whole thing, and then it was like, well, there's a DLC in the game we've been playing. Like, let's just go play it and we've been working hard at it anyway. Let's just see what happens. Obviously, Zan, top 4 is the DLC or whatever it is, and it's just all sort of taken off from there. So I don't really have plans to do too much more, but there's a lot. I'm very active on X. I kind of agree that it's not my favorite platform. Here's what I'll say about X. X is pretty lame. Lorcana X is fantastic. It's like great.
Yes. Thank you.
So that's like an interesting thing about social media. And I joke with a bunch of the other comics because everyone's addicted to social media, right? But they're all addicted to Instagram. And on Instagram, you play this weird comparison game where you're like, oh my God, my life's not as good as any of these people. But since I use X primarily, I'm like, I'm doing great. Like these people are dying in these streets, and I'm doing great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So So no plans to do YouTube, but we'll do the podcast. We're doing it every week. And it's always going to be free. And I'm doing my space every week, which was also really sort of because people wanted me to, and because it most closely resembles sort of like early morning radio, which is something I've always wanted to do anyway. I've always wanted to be a radio host. don't make fun of me for that. So no, yeah, you find me on Zan's YouTube channel. Find me on X at MoxJeremy. We do spaces every Monday, and then you can also find me in the top 8 of whatever tournament that is having Lorcana on whatever weekend.
That's right. Love the confidence, man. You guys should be that confident too. I'm telling you that's what it's about. That's what it takes, man. I really appreciate you for recording the spaces so that I can listen to them too. And I love talk radio, bro. I love morning radio. That's such a soothing thing for me whenever I had to go to class or something. Back in the college days or something. So I understand where you're coming from. I think that's awesome. I had no clue that you guys were just gonna be like, we're done with Magic or whatever. Before we call it a day, why did you like want to leave the Magic space, even like pro Magic, to stop playing like that?
I mean, it's actually pretty simple. We were traveling every weekend. We were signed onto a team that Zan owned, the whole shebang. And then, I was a pro Magic player, right? But pro Magic player is like not really a job that you know that you're going to be able to do forever. So I was always keeping my options open. And then the pandemic happened, and the whole thing pretty much got kiboshed, right? Because there's no more live tournaments, and the demand for pros wasn't there anymore, right? It was just like the game nights or whatever were the only people making any content that had any traction. So it just stopped being a viable way to live my life, and I just, I gotta get a real job. And when I say real job, I just mean a job that exists in the pandemic, during the lockdowns or whatever. And life just moved on, and then it's not exactly something that you want or think that you're gonna be able to go back to, right? You're in such a lucky place if you're ever allowed to support yourself in trading card games, but you never think like, oh, I should go back doing that. It's like, yeah, I was extremely lucky to be able to do that, you know what I mean? So we just thought that it was time to move on. And then when Lorcana came out, I begged Zan to play it with me because, like I said, I have a broken brain and I have to play all the card games. So I begged Zan to play it with me, and the rest is history. Now we are where we are, but we definitely didn't set out to ever make anything. Our podcast started, and it was just in Zan's room, and everyone was complaining about the set. And Zan was like, "I don't even want to do a set. I don't want to do I just like take it or leave it. This is us talking about Lorcana, and if you don't like it, then." Go, there's a bunch of people that are like dying out here to be content creators, so go watch them, but we do really appreciate, obviously, that we get to do it. We don't take this for granted at all. It's just not something we ever thought that we were going to do again. We thought, I mean, I'm 31, Zan's a little older. I'm not allowed to say how much older, but Zan's a little older, and we just thought that was for our 20s and our mid 20s, and we kind of left it behind. And then they're kind of the community's just been great to us, honestly. That people treat Zan so well at these DLCs. It like leaves us in awe. You know what I mean? The reaction to me and Zan at the podcast and the podcast has been like more than we ever thought it would be, by a lot, and so of course we'll keep doing it because we deeply appreciate all that. But yeah, it was never something that we thought was going to happen, basically, and that's just the whole thing.
Well, I'm really glad it did. I really appreciate you guys in the space. I know a lot of people do. It's like I said before, man. It's so necessary to have not just like competitive players that are content creators, but like people like you guys who are not just like nice about the way you guys do things, because some pro players or whatever can be not the nicest, as we've had in other card games experiences. But the information that you guys give out is just very helpful for new players, returning competitive players, people who want to jump into this card game from other card games. So thanks again, man, for everything you guys do. I've told Zan this before, but if you don't mind telling the Lorcana Goons, say thank you again for always uploading those podcasts, man. And thanks again, Jeremy. Really appreciate you for taking the time out of the day to join us on the channel. Zach, anything you want to say?
Actually, Jeremy, I have a small little personal question. I know you do comedy. Do you mind sharing who your favorite stand-up comedian is?
So it's interesting because I'm like one of the more competitive people that I've ever met in my life. So when I get into other people's stand-up comedy, there's all kinds of different categories, and there's like even an amount of like sort of just like jealousy that I have with some of them. But I would say there's some people that I watch, like if I have a big show or I'm like touring, that I like watch for practice. So I'll watch Anthony Jeselnik because I think his timing, in terms of his like comedic timing, is the best on the planet. I just think that he's like mind blowing at that. Obviously there's like some heavy hitters that are like sort of the best mainstream guys that I think really deserve it. I think Shane Gillis is like the medicine this country needs, because he's very, politically our country's really divided. I don't think that's a controversial statement. He's very right coded. In terms of he looks like a Republican guy, and he knows it, but his and I don't even want to say politics, but his like way that he, the things that he thinks are fair and good and true, are very much that like everybody should have a fair shot and stuff. So he's like a breath of fresh air to everyone who sees him, because you tense up when you first see him, almost no matter who you are. So he has like a famous joke where he gets on, and it's a college show that he's doing. This is before he's famous. And he starts his first joke. He goes, yeah, so my dad watches Fox News, and like the air goes like tight. It's like dead in there. Everyone's like super quiet. And then he goes like, by the way, all your dads watch Fox News too. And the crowd just dies, because like, he's so right. So I think that guy's got some really special stuff going on. In terms of like indie people, there's some Atlanta comics that are like breaking new ground. I would shout out Shanik Gotkindi. He's really great. He's doing a lot of sketch stuff up in New York right now that is like really good. And there's this guy, Tevin Williams. He was on like some website did like the top 50 new up and coming comics to watch in 2025 or whatever. And Tevin Williams was on there. I think if you're a big fan of comedy and you want the underground, the niche stuff, you should go listen to everything that he's ever said, because it's all completely hilarious, and it's such a snapshot of Atlanta comedy. I think he's like the king of like what is funny about Atlanta and being a comic in Atlanta. Tevin Williams, Shanik Gotkindi, and then I got to give it to Shane Gillis. I just think he's like the best doing it right now.
Nice.
Thank you so much for sharing, man.
Yeah.
That was,
Fun
I can
fact.
agree on that for sure.
Fun fact, I'm going to put Zach on blast. He also wants to be a stand-up comedian. So if you ever have any tips or anything for someone like that, I know Zach would appreciate it.
I'll tell you what it is right now, because it's the same as my Lorcana thing when I said go do 10 sets. If you ever wanted to be a stand-up comic, find an open mic. Find a place where you could sign up and go perform. I'm not saying the first time you go there you have to, but go watch the open mic. And you're going to either have a feeling or not. If you have a feeling the whole time you're sitting there, like, man, just give me the mic. I'll kill in this room. I can make all these people laugh. Okay, well, then you need to sign up. You need to be doing it. If you don't have that feeling, then you're good. Just walk away. You're lucky you don't have that curse or whatever. But that's step one. Go to an open mic and sit through it. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to. I'm not saying, go so far outside of your comfort zone or whatever. Go to an open mic, sit through it. If at the end of that open mic you go, dang, I should have signed up, then you have your answer.
I've done a couple open mics before, so yes, no, I've taken that plunge. I've written a lot of stuff, but my funnier jokes happen when I'm more on the fly.
Yeah.
I think crowd work is very, very crucial, but this isn't a comedy podcast, so I'm not going to go on and on about comedy. But yeah, this was Quest with a Guest. We had Jeremy Bartarioni with us, and that is, I think that is a very good comedy name, and that's something that I think is important, like stage names. But like the fact that you're born with like a name that you can go up with on stage, and it goes really well too with, I think, like comedic timing and stuff, because that's an Italian last name, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So depending on where you go perform, I'm sure you can make fun of yourself or make fun of that kind of concept. And I think that's also like my shtick is like self-deprecation, like making fun of yourself, I think is very important. But
yeah, I make fun of Zach all the time. No, I'm just kidding. His last name is Zach Stone, which I think is also a great stand-up name.
My first name's Zach. My last name is Zach.
Sorry, yeah, his name is Zach Stone. And I'm Kevin. You've been watching Lorcana Goons, featuring Moggs Jeremy. Be sure to go follow him on social medias for all your Lorcana content, and Instagram if you want some comedic content as well. But this has been Quest with a Guest on Lorcana Goons. We really hope you guys appreciate it. Be sure to hit that like, comment, and subscribe button if you want to join the Goon Squad community, because it does support the channel. But until then, we will see you goons next time.